to force down boreholes and then blow apart the ground in these places where they horizontally drill. They can horizontally drill now, so the borehole goes down vertically, and then it can go horizontally as much as 2 miles. And along that path, they actually explode the ground underneath to obtain the gas from the shale rock. And they use the massive amounts of water to flush down to actually break open the shale rock as well, and then force the natural gas back to the surface. It's an extremely dangerous, environmentally destructive, aquifer destroying. Folks may have seen Josh Fox's movie Gasland, where folks were lighting their faucets on fire from the residue gas coming out. It's radioactive. The water coming back is radioactive. It can't be sent into the treatment plants. We have trucks that haul it away in western Pennsylvania and then open up the back of the truck as they're going down the road and just put the slippery water, the frack water onto the roads. And so it's a tremendous environmental holocaust that's happening now. And there are 10,000 more well permits that are being released over the next couple of years in the state of Pennsylvania, which has become ground zero for this. City of Pittsburgh ran into a situation where they were having gas leases signed by the gas companies for property in the city of Pittsburgh, including underneath the Catholic cemeteries in the city, to drill underneath. And one city council member, his name is Doug Shields, who used to be president of the council, came to us and said, I want to stop this within the city of Pittsburgh, and we're hoping that if we do it here in the city, that other places will do it as well. And we worked with him to draft the first in the country local ordinance that does a number of things. It bans natural gas extraction within the city of Pittsburgh, period. Not just hydrofracking, but all fossil fuel extraction within the city. In addition to that, it strips natural gas corporations of constitutional rights, including Commerce Clause rights and personhood rights within the city of Pittsburgh. It also invalidates any state permit issued that contradicts the ordinance. So it carves out a preemption vacuum within the ordinance itself. And perhaps the most amazing point of them all, of these 100-some places that have passed these ordinances, it contains a secession clause, which essentially says that if any unit of government attempts to preempt this, that it forces the city council, to hold meetings to explore forms of separation from the state, from the unit of government that's actually preempting. Because I think in the end, and that's where a lot of this stuff leads. There's 2 paths. One is, we're going to do this peacefully, and 10,000 communities are going to pass stuff, and then it's going to percolate up. Or the other path, which is folks are going to start to leave. Because right now we're lending our names to all the bad stuff that's happening by virtue of our non-action and actually using our municipalities to build a new system of law. That's what happens now. Silence is assent. And so these places have begun passing these provisions, which are a release point, which say, we now understand what the system is all about. We don't want to be a part of it. And most times it has to be proved to them that that's what the system's all about. But eventually it means leaving. And people ask, well, what does that mean? Didn't we fight a war over that? All this other stuff. We don't quite know what it means. But the fact that the city council of the city of Pittsburgh voted unanimously to adopt an ordinance that does those things with an issue that began as hydrofracking, I think gave me hope in many ways of other places we're doing it. The other place that gives me hope is Spokane, Washington, which put on the ballot a community bill of rights back in 2009.
I need to say, I lived in Spokane for 12 years. It's conservative as hell.
Yes. And in 2009, that bore out. We had a community bill of rights that was 11 provisions big, talked about right to housing, right to health care, right to a bunch of other things. It failed by 24 to 76% in the city. The 24 groups that came to build that shortened it slightly and proposed a community bill of rights of 4 provisions. One, that neighborhoods within the city would have the power to say no to things like Walmart coming in. So veto power against big box stores and other types of development. 2, that the Spokane River, your friend in Spokane, actually had legally enforceable rights. So rights of nature in Spokane. That workers would have constitutional rights and rights to collective bargaining within the city, and finally that corporate rights would be subordinated to the rights of the community. That was the 4th provision. And on Tuesday of last week, after 40,000 ballots were counted in the city of Spokane, we were down by 115 votes. and now it's running 50-50. I don't think it's going to win, but it's that close within the city of Spokane. As you know quite well, the politics of the city
Are terrible.
and it just blew my doors off watching that take place. We expected another 4 years of having to put it back on the ballot, but I think that
And
says
tons
something.
of money went against it.
Yeah, last time it was $500,000. This time it was 150-some thousand. Commercials, you'd wake up in the morning, commercials would be on the television and everything. And I think there's something happening. We don't quite know.
Linzey's going to get your baby.
The dingo ate your baby. But something's happening. It's in the air. And so for a place like Spokane, for 30,000 people to cast a vote to give the Spokane River rights, that's pretty amazing stuff, I have to say.
So do you want to talk more about legally enforceable rights and why it's important and how environmental law falls short?
Environmental law has been a big disaster in many ways. It's all end of the pipe kind of stuff. And we get into fights with environmental lawyers all the time. I mean, I have good friends in EDF and NRDC and all the big environmental groups. We now see them pretty much as impediments to change. That those are the folks that are grabbing on the tightest to regulatory and permit stuff and actually giving new life to that kind of system. And it's unfortunate, but community groups rise up to stop this, that, or the other in their community. There's two places they call when they pick up the phone. One is to the state, because they think that because the state agency is entitled to the Department of Environmental Protection, that it actually does something to protect the environment. And the second place they call is usually to an environmental lawyer who's with one of the Sierra Club or one of the big groups, whatever. And what's funny is both of those phone calls end up in the same place. The state agency says, well, we're very happy that you want to get involved in, determining the future of your community. And in this situation, it means appealing this permit, which means you have to hire a lawyer and get involved in the permit process. So they run you down like cattle in a chute, towards the bottom of the regulatory system. And then unfortunately, what we did for 6 years was what environmental lawyers do today with these groups is that you pick up the phone, you call them, and they say, well, you can't stop it. You can't say no to it, but maybe we can delay it. Or maybe make it work a little better, so that it causes a little less harm. And they send folks right down the regulatory chute. And they all end up at the same place. And of course, the corporations sending people, they both got shot through your head because, on factory farm issues, for example, suicide among farmers is now the #1 cause of death for farmers in the United States, non-natural death for farmers in the United States. There was just that article about India in the paper a couple weeks ago about suicide in India. That people are losing generations old farms and they're killing themselves. And so communities may be concerned about the economics, family farmers getting driven out. They may be concerned about the environmental impacts. They may be concerned about the democracy impacts. I mean, what happens when 4 corporations control 80% of pork processing in the United States, which is the situation today? Well, they gain political power in the legislatures, and then they make more laws, like the one that we have in Pennsylvania now with the Attorney General's office. And so it doesn't matter as a community what your myriad of issues are, how comprehensive your problem statement is, because eventually you get channeled down to this one place where all you can talk about is hog manure, because the state has deemed that the only issue worth discussing is how much liquid manure is put on an acre of land once the liquid manure is produced by the factory farm. And so you go into court, your issue may not be manure at that point. Your issue may be all these other things. And you try to stand up and talk about it, and the judge says, shut up and sit down. It's not relevant. The only thing that's relevant now is whether that liquid manure is being applied properly. And so you have to hire your manure experts, and the other side brings in their manure experts, and you have a manure decision coming out of the judge, but that's all it's about. And so culturally we're controlled because our activism is not effective because we're channeled like cattle down into that place. And how stupid are we to think that we can make the regulatory system work when it's written by the very corporations that ostensibly it's supposed to be regulating?